Good afternoon, and welcome to Fridays with Friends. This week, we're exploring the world of estate planning with attorney Barry Haimo, who's here to discuss a software tool he developed called Estate Studios, designed to simplify and transform the way you plan for the future. Hosting today's conversation are our senior law unit summer interns, April and Mancha. April and Mancha, take it away.
This presentation is not intended to provide specific legal advice. Information is current as of July 11th, 2025. Your hosts, April and Mancha, are not attorneys. They are law student interns. For more information, visit www.coasttocoastlegalaid.org or call 954-736-2400.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mancha Babbar. I'm a legal intern with Coast to Coast Legal Aid in the Senior Law Unit. I'm joined today by my co-interviewer, April Fieser, who is also a legal intern, and our supervising attorney, Jeffrey Hiddleman. We have a really special guest amongst us today, Mr. Barry Haimo. Mr. Haimo is a distinguished attorney who specializes in estate and business planning. He is the president and founder of Estate Studio, a software designed to aid consumers and estate planning lawyers. Through Estate Studio, consumers can organize their assets, ensure their wishes are honored, and protect loved ones. Welcome, Mr. Haimo. It is so great to have you here with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. Happy to chat. Hopefully I can give some meaningful, information to the people that view this. And yeah, I'm excited.
What inspired you to create Estate Studio?
Well, it's a story, really. Depending on how long we have. I was working with a family in 2013. They were a high net worth family, and they had assets all over the place, different complexities of assets, different states, different kinds. And there was a tragic death, and that led to the surviving spouse having to figure out what's going on. And in many, marriages and families, one person is in charge of finances to the, I don't know what the word is, I can't think of the word right now, but they don't know what's going on, the other spouse. And we had to kind of do like a forensic accounting to figure that out. And it was really complicated because there was various trusts involved, entities involved, privileges, access, permissions. They were not granted. We had to fight to get all this information. It took a long time. So I created a spreadsheet that I started to work off of, that I said to myself and to the client, I said, listen, I'm going to start to use this with clients, moving forward. We should have this information from the beginning of the planning process so that if something does, God forbid, happen to you, your family isn't scrambling the way that you are right now. So that became my snapshot, and I used it with every client. In the first hour of working together was really a discovery session of like, what do you have? Where is it? How is it titled? What's the identifying information? How much is it? Beneficiaries, all that kind of stuff. And that evolved over time into like, we could do better. We could do better than this. And so that prompted me, I was meeting with a financial advisor, and he was asking me like, how do I know who is a good fit for you? And I tried to explain to him what estate planning is, because some people really have no idea. And that became like a whole, like, well, let's do a rating system. Let's teach people by education, by giving them a rating, like a credit score, but for estate planning. And so that's kind of the impetus of Estate Studio, which was a rating system of learning how to understand your risk of estate planning risk, which of course includes not knowing where things are, not sharing information, being disorganized, having assets all over the place. And then the portal component to it was like a much more technological, modern version of the snapshot. So that's my long-winded answer. You got to give me a cue if you want like a short answer or a long answer, because I've been doing this a long time. So I'm excited about it. Sorry for the long answer.
Yeah, feel free to take your time in your answers and give us the backstory. I think it helps people understand too the importance. So it's a perfect piggyback. What exactly is estate planning, and why is it important?
Okay. just to finish that last thought in true politician debate fashion, I'm going to go back to the last question. Um, that process was very expensive. Was very expensive, like tens of thousands of dollars. So I equate what we're building here to help people tens of thousands of dollars for free. That's how I associate the value. To answer your question, what is estate planning? Um, I would say I describe estate planning to people as it's lifetime disability planning, it's post-mortem uh, transition, asset protection, wealth preservation. Um, I actually have a really cool visual. I assume this is a visual medium that you're going to share this on. Can I share my screen and show you kind of a visual I made that like answers that question in a really cool way?
Yep. Main benefits of estate planning. Yep.
Well, I've kind of worked up into these little mind maps of kind of like what estate planning really accomplishes because I think it's so much more than what people think it is. People think it's who gets my stuff, like the movie with Clint Eastwood, who gets the car. They sit around a table and they like, what am I getting? And that's really not how it works at all. I think I've done that one time. I did the reading of the will. That's really not a thing. Um, it's really dealing with, as this list suggests, wealth preservation, making sure we're minimizing taxes if it's applicable, keeping assets in the family, limiting exposure to, um, you know, liabilities. Succession planning for businesses is critical. Um, Achieving goals. People have very different goals, what they want to accomplish with their life and their legacy. Asset protection is a very common thing. Anonymity planning is becoming very popular. And that's a lifetime thing too, keeping assets away from creditors, unavailable to creditors. It's perfectly within the law to do that. After you pass away, you can do asset protection to keep things away from spouses and creditors, using trusts and other vehicles. I think probate avoidance and guardianship avoidance is a critical one. It's probably the most common thing that people come to me with before we really expand the scope of goals is avoiding probate and guardianship. And I'm happy to talk more about what that is and how that works and why you want to avoid it. A big thing is fiduciary selection. That's lifetime and postmortem. If you're incapacitated through illness or injury and you need help with financial, administrative, legal, tax, banking, insurance, whatever it is that we take for granted every day, you need to have somebody appointed as your agent or your surrogate for healthcare and medical. It's a surrogate. If you don't, the court will appoint somebody for you. And that's an arduous, I would say an arduous, invasive, expensive process that's unnecessary. Post-mortem, we're talking about wills, PR, executors. In other states, they call it executors. It's way sexier in other states to call it executor. Trustees of trust protectors. Fiduciaries are really, really important. It's a really important concept that requires thinking it through, talking it through, getting to know the families, who we're appointing, why we're appointing them. Are they the right people? Should we use corporate trustees? Should we use professional fiduciaries? Like, just these are conversations we have to have when it comes to estate planning. And avoiding conflict is a really, really important one. When you're talking about death and money, it's like the worst kind of person comes out, and things are never really done like the right thing is not done. It's always an explosion. And so to minimize that, you got to plan ahead, especially in certain circumstances where you have like litigious parties and whatnot. I have a lot of other of these I can share with you later if you want, depending on your questions. But I will.
What is the most common misconception about estate planning?
I would say people think it's always about just who gets my stuff. It's like the will. It's the end all be all, the will. Um, in many or most states, I would say a will is really not as helpful. You have to go through probate. People don't realize that. People think of probate is avoided by having a will, but a will really has no effect until a court, particularly a judge, examines all the facts and looks at it and says it's procedurally and substantively valid, and it's a will, and they stamp it in the probate court, it has no effect whatsoever more than this piece of paper on my desk until then. And so I would say another misconception is that that false sense of security and confidence that they're doing that their plan is going to be effectuated pursuant to their wishes just because they put it on a piece of paper and they put it somewhere. There's so many problems that can happen, especially with the do-it-yourself stuff online, where you could write stuff down and it's procedurally invalid, it's substantively invalid, it's substantively confusing. Like people just think it's really simple who gets my stuff. But in reality, my meetings are multiple hours of talking about, again, like I mentioned earlier, who's the family, what's the family dynamic like, who's the problem, what are the assets, what happens in this circumstance, that circumstance, what are your goals, what about the different contingencies, different fiduciaries need to be stepping in, what are some complications. That's why the assessment is really neat because it talks about all of these things and it will grade you on them to give you kind of a jolt. Yeah, I should, talk to a professional who does this every day and nothing else. So I think that there's a tremendous misconception. When I talk to people who have no idea about estate planning, it's really hard to like explain to them in a way that is going to convince them to do something. It's just not a priority. But if I go talk to like people who get it in the market for it or are more appropriate, like they know exactly what it is, and it's an easy discussion. So long-winded answer, but good one, I think.
You did kind of touch base upon this, but if you could go in a little more detailed, what kind of risks do people avoid by planning ahead? And what happens if someone passes away without an estate plan?
So the risks you're trying to avoid by planning ahead are, I would say default rules is a big one. If you have a blended family, you got your bonus kids, they're not your kids under the eyes of the law. The law is unforgiving. Default rules are going to leave that person with nothing, which is very different than what most people think. Um, Things like homestead in Florida, particularly, are very complicated, and I think most professionals even mess it up. That can leave a very different result um, than desired. I would say taxes. If you have a high net worth estate, you could be paying 43+% to the government instead of charity or leaving it to your family with some careful planning. Um, Obviously, court, which is kind of tying into your second part of your question, probate and guardianship. These are thousands of dollars of unnecessary court intervention. It's not just court, too. You're inviting. You literally have to, under the due process, invite people in to the problem. Creditors have to be notified. Beneficiaries have to be notified. Disinherited beneficiaries that otherwise would be inheriting as an heir must be notified. You are like literally an octagon. You're saying, please come, cause a problem. Here's the venue, please. And so all of that could be avoided by privately settling your affairs outside of the court system, free of conflict and attorney's fees and delays. Not to say that, like, a trust doesn't necessarily avoid being responsible for estate expenses, but it rarely happens. It's such a hurdle for creditors to have to go through and open up a probate themselves. It's much easier when you invite them in and you say, hey, we have a probate. Please file your claim. It's unbelievable. So I would say those are a couple things. There's more. Conflict with family, tug of war among mom or dad who's aging, and you got your sibling who's the paramedic, who's helpful and taking care of the parent, and you got the other freeloaders. You got the freeloaders who just are waiting for, I'm not even joking. I'm serious. They're just waiting for the death to just capitalize on what comes their way. They're not helpful. And then they're upset when like the will goes in a different way. Conflict. It's very, very serious. There's litigators who specialize in estate and trust litigation. And if you don't plan ahead and you have litigious people in your family, or you you do plan ahead, but you do it poorly, or as I said, procedurally, you screw up. Timing wise, it looks bad. You're setting yourself up for what could be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal bills and frustration, court proceedings, years of this. It's much more than just financial, it's emotional. I don't know if you have any experience. You guys are what, legal interns? If you have experience in litigation, but let me tell you, it's a lot more than just financial. It's an emotional journey that is disruptive to your life. So when I'm talking about what we do, it's like life-changing consequences to you, your family, loved ones, your friends, your business. Tying it all together with your second part of your question, which is what happens if you don't plan, this all happens. Okay, it's a dumpster fire, and unfortunately, we see it all the time.
Yeah, this is really helpful because I feel like a lot of people don't know these things, and to get into the nitty-gritties of this is very insightful. You did talk about guardianship and healthcare surrogacy, so I wanted to ask, can a state studio be used for advanced directives?
No, it's not a drafting software. It's not intended to compete with drafting software. We kind of have a little niche of where we are providing value, and it's complementary to various tools that are available online, as well as it's meant to be working with professionals to make their lives easier by having information more readily available. Because I first talked about the snapshot and that first hour of discovery of figuring out what people have, like that snapshot. I'm sorry, that's the studio gets that information in advance. I give a rating in advance. I get an AI summary in advance. I bubble to the surface all the issues that you may not know to tell me. That is really, really important to have. So it's that what we're doing is that's what we're doing. We're not doing other things that competitors are doing, like drafting, like law office management, like Clio, or automating something like Lawmatics and so forth.
All right. And how does estate planning differ for people with young children as opposed to those who are single or retired?
The assessment addresses this. It takes it all into consideration. Um, I get a lot of calls from new parents. Um, the guardianship is kind of always at the forefront of their mind, and then we go through my little routine, and they realize how much more there is to it, and they're so excited and happy to have met me because now I'm not just talking about guardianship and the kind of the relatively short term. I'm talking about the long term protecting what they will ultimately inherit and making sure it's properly managed and it goes through, to the right channels of management. Ultimately, they get the money over time and so forth, and it's protected after they're gone. That's on the I would say the parent um, context. The elder people, I think, said retiree age. You said obviously they have different problems. They're more of like I would say those types of people are thinking more of like asset disposition, maybe some wealth protection in terms of asset protection. They want to get all their I's dotted, their T's crossed, making sure that their accounts are tax optimized, their beneficiaries are in order. Um, they're more looking for optimization, I would say, or certainly tax planning if that's appropriate. But definitely what you're touching on that I'm taking away on is that like there's so many different triggers that maybe somebody might be touching on that kind of leads you in to a bigger picture that really is relevant to everybody. So whether it's substance abuse issues, special needs, family members, it's disorganized assets, it's litigious people, assets all over the place, net worth, asset protection goals, disability. Um, this is why the assessment is so cool because it's jolting you into realizing how much more it is. This is relevant to estate planning. And the portal, as I said, is saving people tens of thousands of dollars by getting organized. Most people are not organized. Age agnostic.
know sometimes people think that they should wait until they have a lot of assets or a lot of money saved. Do you want to touch on the importance of maybe planning early before you're married or before you have children?
Um, People always think estate means mansion with a large or long driveway with a gate that ends to a big house with a butler. And that's not the case. Everybody really has an estate. If you have assets, if you have family, if you have, you know, anything I just described. I mean, you can have no assets and have a special needs child. That warrants work to think through, you know? So I would say that that's repeat the question again, and I'll try to go back to my answer.
Yeah, I just was wanting you to touch on the importance of maybe planning early rather than waiting until you have a lot of assets or a lot of money or something, a lot of property, for example.
Yeah, so people always definitely think they don't have an estate, so they want to do it. Once they do, it's usually could be too late. Um, Remarriage, uh, I have mixed feelings about that because once you get married, spouses have rights. They have marital rights for divorce, which you'll learn about, equitable distribution, alimony, child support, all that kind of stuff. Relevant to me is equitable distribution. But what also people forget is that spouses' rights also exist in death. So an asset that is otherwise premarital and not subject to equitable distribution is still subject in Florida and other states to something called elective share, meaning that the spouse has a right to, at least in Florida, a minimum of 30% of the estate, even if those assets were premarital. So once you get married, it changes the game. If you don't have a prenup, it really makes things complicated. So it's almost like if you're going to do it pre-marriage, you're going to probably do it again after marriage to address these issues. Um, so that's relative to your question about timing, pre-post marriage. Waiting until you have assets or not, I still think everybody should have a will, power of attorney, healthcare, surrogate living will at a minimum. You just don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. And as I said, if you don't make the decision, a guardianship judge will decide for you. And you're better hope that the people that are petitioning the court have your best interests at heart. You know, I would say another thing to think about is young adults. I just posted an article on my Twitter. Um, I just posted the worst article ever for like a parent's worst nightmare of a young adult college student who had a traumatic injury and the parents were like totally shut out because she didn't have documentation. They were like totally shut out. They wouldn't tell them anything. And it just goes to show you, once you become an adult, you got to have these things in place. Again, if you don't decide, the court will decide for you. And sometimes time is of the essence, especially in a medical situation. So I don't feel like this is a great answer because it's a complicated question. Um, so I don't think I feel great about the answer, but it's an answer.
Sure, I mean, everyone will have to, take their own situation into consideration, but you don't want it to be too late when you start planning. Switching gears a little bit. So how does Estate Studio help, you as an attorney, help people plan and keep those things organized?
So the product is a two-sided market, right? We have the freemium consumer product and we have the professional subscription product. Right now, we're making some changes, but that's where we are now. On the consumer side, as I mentioned, for free, it's live right now. It's totally functional. It's kind of like our MVP, minimum viable product. You can go on our site at estate.studio or my.estate.studio. You can take your free assessment. It takes about 7 minutes. You get your proprietary rating over 3 or 4 categories, depending on if you have a business. And then it gives you a rating or a beautiful report, and it walks you into a portal where you can upload your documents of any kind, really, estate planning, insurance. You can input your trusted contacts, like your family, friends, loved ones, and you can add your professional, like me, and you can share it with these people if you want. Obviously, it's helpful to share with me. Actually have an account, so I can open it up to you, and then once you share it with me, I can see what you see, and that's really helpful. So on the consumer side, you're getting educated, you're getting a rating. This doesn't exist. When you go to an attorney, all you do is you get a form to complete that is stale. It's stale once you complete it, and your life changes at all. So it's like a constant thing that has to be done. It's for the lawyer's benefit to help you, whereas this is actually for your benefit as the user to learn and understand where you are, and then take it at the end and get a tangible, I would say a tangible reflection or evidence of your progress, that your time, energy, money was spent wisely. To a good score, because you did your documents, you're going to see that. Otherwise, you leave with documents, you probably don't know what they say. You're hoping that they work. You're banking on the attorney's, reputation that they're, doing a good job. So on the consumer side, it's a really helpful product. It's valuable. I think it's worth tens of thousands of dollars in terms of organization. On the professional side, it's really helpful to, as I mentioned, to get this information in advance. Okay, you want to spend 2 hours with me and go through what you have, what banks it is, brokerage accounts it is, are they SEPs, are they Roths, are they life insurance, are they whole life term? Do you have businesses? Are they S corps, C corps, partnerships? You have trusts. Are they grantor, non-grantor? I mean, it's a lot to do. Imagine just giving it to me up front, just sharing with me your portal. I look at it. We're already ready. We're talking now. Now we can have a conversation. What do you really want to accomplish? I already know what the issues are. You gave me your assessment. I know there's substance abuse, there's special needs, there's toxic family members, there's assets all over the place, there's debts and liabilities exposure, there's a disability in the family that's not a special needs situation. Um, you have a business, you haven't planned for it. Like, I know the issues now. You're not getting this information in the garden variety representation process that exists in our current environment. Right now, I think consumers are sadly kind of forced to accept the way things work. And I don't accept that. I'm a computer science background, business tax law background. I just refuse to accept the status quo. So I said, no, let's fix this. Let's change it to imagine I have all the information all the time as your attorney. You go and you buy a house, you sell a house, you buy a business, sell a house, business, whatever meaningful or material event happens in your life, I will get a notification. I can reach out to you and say, April, and is it Mancha?
1 second.
Did I say it right?
It's Mancha.
Mancha.
Yeah.
We're even now. So Mancha and April, hey, I noticed that this transaction happened. Let's talk about it. Let's see if it's the right thing. Let's get ahead of it if it's not. Let's fix it if it's a problem. That proactivity doesn't happen. In our environment of lawyer-client relationship, the lawyer waits for the client to call. The lawyer waits for some friend to tell them in their ear, like, I did something with the trust. Oh, I should call a lawyer. Maybe I should call a lawyer. Like, that's a reactive representation process, and it shouldn't be that way. Obviously, there's ethical rules to navigate that you'll learn about in your professional conduct class, but those can be navigated to give this type of level of representation. And clients like this. Clients want this. And that's why it improves what we're doing, to answer your question, and again, in a long-winded fashion.
That's okay. Some of the clients, well, most of the clients we work with are seniors in our unit. So sometimes it might not be so great with technology, or maybe not so trusting about it. You're going to just point out maybe security features or ease of access features that, our seniors would want to hear about before.
We have some seniors that use it, but that's a fair point. In terms of how it works, I think it's very easy. It uses the shared email security model. There's no password. You have an email, it emails you a link. It's a one-time link. So you click it, and it gets you on, and It cannot be clicked again. So really, the safety of your email account is kind of how we preserve the safety of the portal. It's a common way of doing things in the software industry. Security wise, we have all of the requisite security protocols that you need to have like top-notch industry standard security, encryption at rest and transit, all that kind of stuff. So that's fine. But you make a good point. I mean, some people are not techie, and some people are not going to want to use it. And that's, you can't solve all the world's problems at once.
So what stages of estate planning can Estate Studio help with? Just for a little refresher for our listeners.
Starts with discovery, or really finding an attorney that you feel comfortable with talking to, that has a personable nature and you feel like you can talk to, because it's all very personal and intimate information. And not everybody feels comfortable. So find the right attorneys first, then discovery second. And then usually there's an engagement process, and you get engaged, and then you do some work, some drafting. Usually that results in back and forth, edits and stuff like that. Excuse me, propose edits and changes, and as you work through the docs, and the people change their mind, and calls and meetings and stuff. And then ultimately you schedule for signing, you sign, then you have your post representation process, which I think most attorneys are deficient in, that post representation nurturing. So to go back to the beginning of the process, Estate Studio, I would say, is helpful at the present moment on the ends. It's helpful in discovery. It's helpful to get the information for me of what I need to know, bubbling to the surface from the assessment, getting access to the portal. We did build something to help share drafts in a really cool way that would be transparent, and because most of the time in our current existence right now, you will attach documents and send them in an email, and there's just a back and forth stream of documents going back and forth. I don't know which one's the newest one. There's red line on this one. Some people send PDFs, and the client puts in, they scribble their notes. Some do the comments on the right, so they're like siloed, buried comments. There's no way to see these comments unless you open up the document, you view comments. And there's email. Oh, page 1, article 7, change this. There's no uniformity in how this process works. And my brain works in the form of trying to make things more efficient. So we built something that's pretty cool that will make it all in one place and uniform in how it's done, and transparent and easy, and within the portal. But it's not launched yet. But it's pretty cool. So presently, not helpful in that current situation. So moving along to the final documents, they're signed. You can upload them, of course, to the portal. They'll be visible to your trusted contacts and your professional. And then that's kind of where I think you take the studio assessment again at the end, so you can see you've dramatically increased your score. You'll feel good about what you did. Over time, that score will change. If you do it every year, it will change. Ultimately, obviously, on the back end, to clarify my prior point, the automated notifications that, a meaningful life event has happened is not built in yet. That proactivity is on my priority list, but it's not built in yet. But the post representation nurturing that I think most attorneys are deficient in is super important. A lot of attorneys are just one transaction ponies, right? You come here, you do a will, you never see them again until either they die, or something occurs to the client that they're like, hey, we should redo our docs or change this. And that shouldn't be the case. You should be checking in with your clients regularly, see how they're doing. Are they well? Are they healthy? What's going on? And this is going to help facilitate that part of the process, which results in what I like to call increased customer lifetime value. So that is my long-winded but thorough answer.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you pointed out about like documents and clutter and how some people get overwhelmed by that. So I think it's really interesting that you're planning to streamline that. It'll make it more user friendly for people who are intimidated by this stuff. How often should someone review or update their estate plan according to you?
I would say like every 3 to 5 years, or sooner if there's a life event of any kind. Really, that was easy.
What kind of life events, like, maybe getting married, purchasing property, anything that maybe people wouldn't think of?
Sure. So birth of a child, death of a loved one. Um, I would say change in income, maybe type of job, liability exposure of a job, um, starting companies, selling companies, um, having a problem with a kid that's on drugs, special needs, God forbid, a special needs situation. All the same things I keep telling you about. It's just like if things happen, you really got to revisit what's going on. Tax code changes, tax law changes, you know, um, I don't know. I mean, there's just so many things that can happen in life that, depending on what your goals are, it could be none of what I just said, but if your goals now change, that could be another thing to think about. I had a meeting yesterday where his circumstances changed. His documents, which were like ironclad, never going to change, not and intending not to change, his circumstances changed. Now I want to change them, and he was pretty damn happy that I was able to tell him we could do that. So yeah, that was that's what I would say.
I know you touched on this briefly, that there really isn't much else like a state studio. What is there anything else that's different from other things that are out there that you want to highlight, or any other closing remarks you might have on estate planning, estate studio, maybe any other piece of advice?
Is this my closing remarks? It is my closing remarks. Um, I would say, um, there's a lot of information with AI coming out now. I can't believe you didn't ask about AI yet. I'm very disappointed. AI is a scary thing. It's exciting. I'm super excited about it. I love playing with it. But it's scary. I'm getting a lot of calls from people that are telling me how things work now because ChatGPT told them. And I think there's going to be a lot of litigation with how this stuff blows up when they realize that they've relied on ChatGPT. We're definitely not there yet. I think working with professionals that do this every day, this particular work, I've cleaned up a lot of messes from attorney drafted work. They just didn't do this every day. They were dabbling. So if attorneys can screw it up, a regular person who doesn't have experience with substance and process and planning and strategy, I've been doing this for 17 years. Like, it's all I do. You're not going to catch up with me by doing ChatGPT. So the online things are good for a very small subset of people. I think everybody really needs to prioritize planning, doing it now while you're healthy, while you're not incapacitated, while there's no conflict, before you get sued for asset protection, not after you get sued, but before you get sued. Um, I can't stress it enough that the consequences are financial, emotional. They're going to eat up your time. They're going to change your world in a good way or a bad way, depending on how you approach it and the seriousness in which you take it. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for speaking about, estate planning, estate studio, and all the important things. I think you explained things really clearly, and that will help out the folks listening to this. So just thank you again for your time, and it was great to meet you.
Thanks for joining us on Fridays with Friends. We hope you found today's conversation helpful. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms to stay connected with the latest legal tips, resources, and stories from our community. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. More legal insight and information coming your way soon.